The candles on my 30th birthday cake were still burning when my father said the words that would change everything. "You're 30 now, Dorothy. Time to stop freeloading." My mother sat across from me, silent and nodding. Within 2 hours, my belongings were in garbage bags on the driveway. They didn't know I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years. They didn't know I'd kept their cars from being repossessed. They didn't know anything. As I drove away that night, I pulled out my phone and started making changes. By morning, their entire world would collapse. 3 years ago, everything changed for me. I landed a job as a senior software engineer at a major tech company in Austin, Texas. The salary was $175,000 a year. I remember sitting in my beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot after getting the offer, crying with relief and joy. Finally, after years of struggling through college and entry-level positions, I'd made it. I drove straight to my parents' house to share the news. My father, Gerald, was sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by bills. My mother, Patricia, was pretending to watch television, but I could see the stress lines deepening around her mouth. That's when I learned the truth. Dad's construction business had failed 18 months earlier. The housing market crash hit small contractors hard and he lost everything. Mom's part-time retail job brought in maybe $15,000 a year. They were drowning. The mortgage on their 4-bedroom house was $2,800 monthly. Both car payments combined totaled $700. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, utilities, groceries. The numbers didn't add up. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. I made a decision that night that would define the next 3 years of my life. I told them I'd help. Actually, I did more than help. I took over completely. I started making their mortgage payments directly from my account. I added both car payments to my automatic bill pay. I gave them a credit card that was linked to my account and told them to use it for groceries and essentials. But here's the thing. I didn't tell them it was my money. I told them I'd qualified for some kind of family assistance program through my company. Looking back, I don't know why they never questioned it. Maybe they didn't want to look too closely at a miracle. I moved into their guest house out back. It was a small, converted garage with a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette. I paid $7,000 to renovate it properly, making it comfortable and private. I lived simply, saved aggressively, and paid off my $60,000 in student loans within 18 months. The rest of my income went to keeping my parents afloat and building my own savings. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought family helped family. I thought they'd be grateful, even if they didn't know the full extent of what I was doing. I was wrong. The shift started about 6 months ago. Small comments at first. "Dorothy, don't you think it's time you got your own place?" When I see my friends, their 30-year-old children have houses and families. What do I tell them when they ask about you? You know, successful people don't live with their parents at your age. My mother said these things while I was paying for her groceries, while I was ensuring she had a roof over her head, while I was protecting her from financial ruin. But she didn't know that. She thought some company program was saving them. She thought I was just living rent-free in their guest house, working my computer job, and contributing nothing. My younger brother, Carl, moved to California 4 years ago. He called once a month, never visited, never sent money, and never asked how our parents were managing. But somehow, he was the golden child. Carl's doing so well in California. Carl's got such an important job. Carl's so independent. The comparison was constant and cutting. The birthday dinner started normally enough. Mom made pot roast, my childhood favorite. There was a grocery store cake with 30 candles. Dad opened a beer. Mom poured wine. We sat at the dining room table like a normal family. Then Dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he's about to say something he's been rehearsing. "Dorothy, your mother and I have been talking. You're 30 now. That's a milestone. Time to really launch into independent adult life. We think it's time you found your own place. Started your own household. You've been here long enough. I set down my fork carefully. What do you mean? Mom jumped in, her voice sharp. We mean you're 30 years old and still living at home. It's embarrassing. Our friends ask about you, and what are we supposed to say? She works on computers and lives in our backyard? It doesn't look good. I could feel heat rising in my chest. I've been contributing. I've been helping. Dad shook his head. Living rent-free isn't contributing, Dorothy. It's freeloading. We need our space back. We need our privacy. We've been more than generous letting you stay this long. The words hit me like physical blows. Freeloading. Generous. I opened my mouth to tell them everything. To explain that I'd paid $100,800 in mortgage payments over 3 years. That I'd covered $25,200 in car payments. That the credit card they used for groceries had cost me $38,000. That I'd paid their property taxes, their insurance, their utilities when they came up short. That I'd kept them from losing everything. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was hurt so deep I couldn't find words for it. Maybe I wanted to see what would happen if I just let reality teach the lesson I couldn't. So instead I said, When do you want me out? Tonight, Mom said immediately. We've already packed your things. The boxes are in the guest house. We think it's better to make a clean break. No long goodbyes or drawn-out drama. I stood up from the table. My birthday cake sat untouched, candles burning down into the frosting. Okay. They looked surprised by my calm. Dad had probably expected tears or arguments. Mom had probably prepared a whole speech about tough love and adult responsibility. I gave them nothing. I walked out to the guest house, found my entire life packed into cardboard boxes and garbage bags, and started loading my car. It took 4 trips. Neither of them came out to help. When I finished, I stood in the driveway of the house I'd saved, looking at the windows glowing warm against the dark Texas sky. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The mortgage payment was scheduled to process automatically the next morning. $2,800 from my account to their loan servicer. I canceled it. The car payments were set to process in 2 days. I canceled them both. The credit card they used for everything was linked to my account as an authorized user card. I removed their authorization. 3 years of automatic payments, all scheduled to stop. Then I got in my car and drove to a hotel. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just drove through the empty Austin streets, checking into a Hampton Inn near downtown, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. At 11 o'clock, a text came through from Mom. Don't be dramatic. You can come get your mail tomorrow. We're going to bed. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. They thought I was powerless. They thought I'd come crawling back, apologizing for being inconvenient, begging for another chance. They had no idea what was coming. I set my phone on the nightstand and finally let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the dismissal, the complete lack of recognition for everything I'd sacrificed. And underneath it all, a cold, clear certainty. I was done protecting them from consequences. It was time to let the truth speak for itself. I woke up at 6:30 the next morning to my phone vibrating across the hotel nightstand. 3 missed calls from Dad. I listened to the voicemail while drinking terrible hotel coffee. Dorothy, it's your father. There's some kind of problem with the mortgage payment. The company called saying it was declined. I don't understand what happened. This is that family assistance program from your work, right? You need to call them and fix this immediately. This is serious. Call me back. His voice was annoyed, entitled. Like I was a customer service representative who'd made an error that needed correcting. I deleted the voicemail and opened my laptop. Time to find an apartment. By 8 o'clock, I'd contacted a realtor named Judith Harper, who specialized in downtown Austin rentals. By 9, I was sitting in her office, looking at listings. Judith was probably 55, with short gray hair and the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who'd seen every kind of housing drama. What's your budget? She asked. I can afford up to $3,000 a month, but I'd prefer something around $2,000. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Pre-approved for first, last, and deposit? I can write a check today. We found it on the third viewing. A one-bedroom apartment in a converted warehouse downtown. Exposed brick, huge windows, walking distance to my office. The rent was $1,900 monthly. I wrote a check for $5,700 on the spot. First month, last month, security deposit. Move-in date, 3 days from now. I felt something loosening in my chest as I signed the lease. This was mine. Nobody could take it away. Nobody could make me feel like I didn't deserve to be there. My phone rang while I was still in Judith's office. Mom this time, I answered. Dorothy, what on earth is going on? I was at the grocery store, and your credit card was declined. There's obviously some mistake. You need to fix it right now. I have a cart full of food, and I'm standing here like an idiot. That's not my card anymore, Mom. I kept my voice level, professional. You told me I was freeloading. Freeloaders don't pay for other people's groceries. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've been paying for everything for 3 years. The mortgage, the cars, the insurance, the taxes, that credit card, all of it. There was no company assistance program. It was me. It was always me. More silence. I could hear grocery store sounds in the background. Someone's crying baby. The beep of a cash register. You're lying, Mom finally said. Your father handles all of that. Check the bank statements, I said. Check who the payments came from. Check everything. And while you're at it, you should know that I canceled all the automatic payments. You're on your own now, just like you wanted. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but it felt good. It felt right. Judith was tactfully pretending to review paperwork, but I could tell she'd heard everything. You okay? She asked quietly. I will be. By noon, I'd set up utilities for the new apartment and bought basic furniture online. Everything would be delivered in 2 days. I was eating lunch at a sandwich shop when my phone rang again. This time, it was a California number. Carl. I almost didn't answer. My brother and I hadn't been close in years. He'd escaped to the West Coast and built his own life, leaving me to manage everything in Texas. But curiosity won. How could you do this? He said, instead of hello. His voice was hot with anger. Mom and Dad just called me crying. They told me you've abandoned them, cut off all their financial support, and left them in crisis. After everything they've done for you, how could you be so selfish? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Everything they've done for me? Carl, what exactly did they tell you? They told me you've been living there rent-free for 3 years. That they've been supporting you while you figured out your career. That the moment they asked you to start contributing or move out, you threw a tantrum and sabotaged their finances somehow. Mom said you were always dramatic, but this is beyond anything she expected. I laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. Is that what they said? Yes. And honestly, Dorothy, I'm ashamed. I know we haven't been close, but I thought you were better than this. The lies took my breath away. The complete inversion of reality. They'd called our brother and painted themselves as victims of my cruelty. They'd turned me into the villain of a story where I'd been the hero. Carl, I said slowly, do you know what I make at my job? I don't know. Tech stuff. Maybe $60,000? $175,000 a year, I said. I've been making that for 3 years. And do you know where that money went? He didn't answer. It went to keeping Mom and Dad's house from foreclosure. It went to paying both their car payments every month. It went to their insurance, their property taxes, and every grocery store run they've made for 3 years. I've paid $196,400 to keep them afloat. They didn't know, because I told them it was a company assistance program. I did it because I loved them. And 2 nights ago, on my 30th birthday, they kicked me out and called me a freeloader, so I stopped the payments. That's all I did. I stopped carrying their entire financial life on my back. Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. "You're serious," Carl finally said. "Dead serious. I have every bank statement, every transaction record, every canceled check. I can prove every word." His voice changed, went quiet. "They told me you were the problem. They told me you weren't contributing. They lied about everything." There was a long pause. Then Carl said something that changed everything. "Dorothy, they did the same thing to me." "What?" 5 years ago, before I moved to California, I was living at home, working 2 jobs, trying to save money. I was paying rent to them, actual rent, $500 a month. One day, Dad sat me down and told me I was a disappointment, that I wasn't living up to my potential, that successful men my age had careers and families, and I was just drifting. He told me I needed to leave immediately, that my presence was embarrassing them with the neighbors. I packed that night and drove to California with $800 and no plan. I've been pretending to be successful ever since because I was so ashamed. I let them think I'm some big tech entrepreneur when really I'm just a restaurant manager barely making rent. I thought I was the only one who wasn't good enough for them. My throat closed up. "Carl, I didn't know. I never told anyone. I was too humiliated. But Dorothy, if they lied to me about you, and they lied to you about me, what else have they been lying about?" "Everything," I whispered. We talked for 2 more hours, comparing stories, filling in gaps, reconstructing our childhood with new, clearer eyes. The constant criticism, the impossible standards. The conditional love based entirely on achievement and appearance. The way we'd both been sacrificing ourselves trying to earn approval that would never come. By the time we hung up, something had shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally. And together, we were going to figure out what happened next. But first, the dominoes had to finish falling. The next morning, I went to my bank and requested printed statements for the past 3 years. The teller, a young guy named Marcus, processed the request without comment, but I saw his eyebrows rise when the printer kept spitting out pages. When he handed me the stack, it was 2 inches thick. "This is a lot of transactions," he said carefully. 3 years of keeping a family afloat," I replied. Back at the hotel, I spread everything across the desk and started building a spreadsheet. Every mortgage payment, every car payment, every insurance premium, every property tax installment, every credit card charge. The numbers were staggering. $100,800 to the mortgage company, $25,200 in car payments, $14,400 in insurance premiums, $38,000 in credit card expenses for their groceries and gas, $18,000 in property taxes. Total, $196,400 in 3 years. I scanned every document, organized them by category, and created a PDF portfolio. If anyone questioned the truth, I had irrefutable proof. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "We need to talk. Where are you?" I sent him the hotel address. 30 minutes later, he walked into the lobby. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes red, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. He spotted me sitting in a corner chair and walked over, his face a mix of desperation and anger. "What hotel are you staying at?" he asked. "We need to discuss this situation. We can talk here." He glanced around at the lobby, at the business travelers checking in, at the breakfast area where people were eating free waffles. Fine. I'd brought the folder of documents. I handed it to him without a word. He opened it and started flipping through pages. His face went from confusion to comprehension to something that looked like shock. He kept flipping, faster now, seeing the same account number over and over. My account number. Payments to the mortgage company, the car loan servicers, the insurance company, all from me. "This can't be right," he muttered. Check the dates, check the amounts, check your own bank statements against mine. It's all accurate. He sank into the chair across from me, still holding the papers. Why would you do this? Because you're my parents. Because you were struggling. Because I thought family helped family. But you told us it was a company program. I know. I didn't want you to feel like a burden. I wanted you to keep your dignity. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Dorothy, if I'd known. But you didn't ask. In 3 years, neither of you asked a single question about where the money was coming from. You just took it, and then treated me like I was taking from you. He flinched, your mother thought. She was embarrassed. You know how she is about appearances? Her friends' kids have fancy jobs, houses, families. She thought you living in the guest house made us look like failures as parents. So she convinced you I was the problem. He nodded slowly. I should have looked into it. I should have asked questions. But honestly, Dorothy, I was just relieved. The pressure was gone. The bills were getting paid. I could breathe. I didn't want to examine it too closely in case it went away. Well, now it's gone, I said. The mortgage payment bounced. Both car payments are overdue. Your insurance is going to lapse. You're on your own. His face crumpled. We can't afford any of it. We have maybe $3,000 in savings. The mortgage alone is $2,800 a month. We'll lose the house. Then you'll lose the house. He stared at me. You'd really let that happen? Let us become homeless? The question should have hurt, but I felt nothing. You kicked me out on my birthday and called me a freeloader. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Dorothy, please. I'm begging you. Just restore the mortgage payments. We'll figure out the rest. We'll apologize. We'll make this right. I need time to think. We don't have time. The foreclosure process has already started. We have maybe 30 days to catch up on the missed payment plus late fees. I stood up, gathering my things. Then you'd better start figuring out how to come up with that money. I left him sitting there, surrounded by evidence of my generosity and his ignorance. That evening, I drove to the house to collect some remaining belongings I'd forgotten. It was 7 o'clock, just getting dark. I let myself in through the side gate and walked to the guest house. The main house was lit up, and through the kitchen window, I could see Mom sitting at the table. The lights were off except for the fixture above her. She was surrounded by papers, bills, notices, collection letters. I should have just grabbed my things and left. But something made me walk to the kitchen door and knock. She looked up, saw me, and her face went through several expressions. Surprise. Anger. Something that might have been shame. She came to the door but didn't open it, just stood there on the other side of the glass. I held up my key to the guest house, just getting the last of my things. She unlocked the door and stepped aside. I walked past her into the kitchen. The papers on the table told a story. The mortgage company notice with urgent, stamped in red. Both car payment late notices. An insurance cancellation warning. A property tax bill coming due in 10 days. Dad showed me the bank statements, she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Good. I don't understand why you lied to us. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. You don't understand why I lied? You should have told us the truth. That you were paying for everything. We had a right to know. You had a right to know that your daughter was sacrificing her entire financial future to save you from losing everything? The daughter you kicked out and called a freeloader? That daughter? Her jaw tightened. If you had just been more successful, more impressive. If you'd had a job people understood, a career people respected, I wouldn't have felt ashamed. This is your fault for not being enough. The words hung in the air between us. For not being enough. There it was, the core of everything. I would never be enough for her. No amount of money, no amount of sacrifice, no amount of love would ever satisfy the bottomless pit of her need for external validation. I picked up one of the bills from the table. $3,500 to bring the mortgage current. You have 10 days to pay this, or they start foreclosure proceedings. We don't have it, she said. Then I guess you'll lose the house. You'd really do that? Let us lose everything? I set the bill back down and looked at her directly. Mom, I already gave you everything. I gave you $196,400. I gave you 3 years of my life. I gave you my savings, my time, my energy. I gave you security and stability and peace. And you threw me away like I was garbage. So yeah, I'm really going to let you face the consequences of your own choices. Her face twisted with anger. You're cruel. You're vindictive. I raised you better than this. No, I said quietly. You didn't raise me at all. You criticized me, compared me, and found me wanting at every turn. But you didn't raise me. I raised myself. I walked out of the kitchen, collected my remaining boxes from the guest house, and loaded them into my car. Through the window, I could see Mom still sitting at the table in the dark, surrounded by bills she couldn't pay and consequences she'd never expected. I drove back to the hotel feeling empty but certain. Some lessons can only be learned through pain, and some people need to lose everything before they can see what they had. Day 3, after my birthday. Moving day. The furniture delivery truck arrived at my new apartment at 8 in the morning. By noon, I had a bed, a couch, a kitchen table, and the basic necessities of independent life. My coworker Amanda stopped by after work with a housewarming gift, a coffee maker, and a bottle of wine. This place is perfect, she said, looking around at the exposed brick and tall windows. And you seem different. Lighter. I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for years and finally set it down. We sat on my new couch drinking wine, and I told her everything. About my parents, the money, the birthday disaster. Amanda listened without interrupting, her face cycling through shock, anger, and understanding. You did the right thing, she finally said. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Try telling them that. My phone buzzed on the counter. I ignored it. It had been buzzing all day. Calls from Dad, texts from Mom, voicemails I hadn't listened to. Let them sit with the reality they'd created. Meanwhile, 45 minutes across town, my parents' world was disintegrating in real time. The mortgage company had officially started the foreclosure process. They had 30 days to catch up on the missed payment, plus a $500 late fee. $3,300 total. Money they didn't have. Both cars were now 10 days past due on their payments. The finance companies had sent notices warning of repossession if payments weren't received within 15 days. The credit card company, the one tied to my account that they'd used for everything, had reported them to collections for the outstanding balance. They'd run up charges, assuming the bill would be paid automatically like always. Instead, they now owed $2,800 to a collections agency that called 6 times a day. Their credit scores, which had been hovering around 680, plummeted to 490 within 72 hours. Dad's phone rang constantly. Collection calls. The mortgage company. The insurance agent warning that their policies would lapse. He stopped answering. Just let the phone ring and ring while he sat at the kitchen table staring at bills he couldn't pay. Mom went to work at the department store where she'd been part-time for 8 years. Her manager asked if everything was okay at home. She looked tired, stressed. Mom snapped at her and nearly got written up. She couldn't focus, couldn't smile at customers, couldn't pretend everything was fine when her entire life was collapsing. On day 4, Carl flew home from California. He'd told our parents he was coming to help mediate. What he actually came to do was verify everything I'd told him. He showed up at my new apartment unannounced, standing in the hallway with a duffel bag and an expression I couldn't quite read. "Can I come in?" I let him inside. He walked around the space, taking in the emptiness of someone just starting over. Then he sat on my couch and put his face in his hands. I went to the house, he said. I talked to them. I asked to see the bank statements, the mortgage documents, everything. Dorothy, you weren't exaggerating. If anything, you understated how bad it was. They were 3 months behind when you took over. The house was already in pre-foreclosure. You didn't just help them. You saved them. I sat down next to him. Did they admit it? Dad did. Mom still thinks you should have told them the truth from the beginning. She's rewriting the story in her head, where she's the victim of your deception. Of course she is. Carl looked at me with something like awe. How did you do it? How did you carry all of that alone for 3 years? I don't know. I thought it was the right thing. I thought they'd appreciate it even if they didn't know the details. They should have known. The fact that they never asked, never questioned where the money was coming from, says everything about them. We sat in silence for a while. Then Carl said, I talked to Mom about what happened to me, about how they kicked me out 5 years ago. She denied it at first, said I was misremembering. But Dad backed me up. He admitted it happened. And then you know what she said? What? She said we're both too sensitive. That parents have a right to expect their children to succeed. That she was just trying to motivate us. I felt a surge of anger so intense my hands shook. Motivate us? By destroying us? She doesn't see it that way. And I don't think she ever will. There's something broken in her, Dorothy. Something that makes her incapable of seeing anyone's pain but her own. So what do we do? Carl leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. We protect ourselves. We set boundaries. We decide how much contact we're willing to have and under what conditions. But we don't set ourselves on fire to keep them warm. Not anymore. The next day, Carl and I drove to the house together. We'd called ahead and told them we were coming. We needed to have a family meeting. Dad answered the door looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Mom was in the living room, her posture rigid with defensive anger. We all sat down. The silence was thick and uncomfortable. Carl spoke first. I've been talking to Dorothy. I know everything now. About the money, about what really happened. And I told her about what you did to me 5 years ago. We've compared notes. We've seen the pattern. And we need to talk about what happens next. Dad nodded slowly. I know we messed up. I know we hurt you both. I'm sorry. Mom said nothing, her face stony. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to help you one more time. But not because you deserve it. Because I don't want to watch you become homeless. I'm going to pay the mortgage arrears and restore monthly payments for 6 months. 6 months only. In that time, you're going to get your financial house in order. How? Dad asked. I pulled out a printed document. Carl and I had worked on it the night before. This is a written agreement. Terms are non-negotiable. You sell 1 car immediately and pay off the loan. That eliminates $700 a month in payments. Mom gets a full-time job. That adds at least another $1,000 monthly income. Dad takes every construction job he can get, even small ones. No more being picky. You attend financial counseling through a nonprofit agency. And all of us, all 4 of us, attend family therapy once a month. Mom's face flushed red. You're trying to control us. This is manipulation. No, Carl said firmly. This is accountability. You've been living beyond your means for decades. You destroyed your own finances, and then blamed your children for not being impressive enough to make you look good. That ends now. And there's one more condition, I added. You both write formal apologies, acknowledging specifically what you did wrong. Not vague, sorry you feel that way statements. Real apologies taking responsibility. Dad nodded immediately. I can do that. I will do that. Mom stood up abruptly. I won't be bullied by my own children. This is outrageous. Then you'll lose your house, I said calmly. Your choice. She stormed out of the room. We heard the bedroom door slam. Dad sat there, head in his hands. She's stubborn. She doesn't apologize. She never has. Then she'll learn, Carl said, because we're done accepting less than we deserve. 2 days passed. Mom didn't call. Then, on the third day, my phone rang. Her number. I almost didn't answer. The offer still stands? Her voice was small, different from any tone I'd ever heard from her. Yes. All the terms? All of them. A long pause. Fine. We agree. I need it in writing. Both of you sign the agreement. Bring it to me tomorrow. That night, I paid the $3,300 to bring their mortgage current. I set up automatic payments again, scheduled to stop in exactly 6 months. I created a separate savings account and started depositing $1,000 monthly. When they inevitably couldn't afford the house long term, I'd have a gift for them. A down payment on something smaller, more realistic. But they didn't need to know that yet. The next day, they delivered the signed agreement. Dad looked relieved. Mom looked defeated. But there was something else in her expression. Something I'd never seen before. Fear. She was genuinely afraid of losing everything. And maybe, just maybe, that fear would be the beginning of change. The first family therapy session was scheduled for the following week. I didn't have high hopes. But I'd done what I set out to do. I'd protected myself while offering one final chance. What they did with it was up to them. Carl stayed in Texas for 10 days. We spent hours every day just talking. Sitting in my new apartment, walking around downtown Austin, eating at food trucks, reconstructing our entire childhood through this new lens of understanding. He told me about the night they kicked him out, how Dad had called him into the living room and given him a speech about manhood and responsibility, how Mom had sat there nodding along, adding comments about how disappointed she was, how he'd packed everything he owned into his Honda Accord and driven west with no plan and nowhere to go. I slept in my car for 3 weeks, he said, in a Walmart parking lot in Phoenix. I'd shower at a 24-hour gym I paid $30 a month for. I finally got hired at a restaurant and slept on the cook's couch until I could afford a room in a shared house. It took me 2 years to get stable, and the whole time, I let Mom and Dad think I was thriving. I sent them pictures of nice restaurants where I worked, not where I ate. I told them about the tech scene in California like I was part of it, not serving food to people who actually were. I was so ashamed. You didn't have anything to be ashamed of, I said. You survived. You rebuilt. That takes incredible strength. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a failure, like I'd proven them right about me. That's what they wanted you to feel. That's how they keep control, by making us believe we're never good enough. We realized we'd both been living in isolation, each thinking we were the only one who couldn't measure up to Mom's impossible standards. The golden child and the disappointment, when really we were both just targets of a system designed to make us fail. When did you figure out Mom was the problem? He asked. Not until this week, honestly. I thought Dad was the one calling the shots. But the more I think about it, the more I see how she's always been the driving force. Dad's passive. He goes along. But Mom's the one who needs everything to look a certain way. She's the one who compares us to other people's kids. She's the one who can't tolerate anything less than perfection. Do you think she'll actually change? I don't know. But I think she's capable of learning to manage her behavior even if the underlying need for control doesn't go away. That's what the therapy is for. The day before Carl flew back to California, we went to a coffee shop and drafted a plan. How much contact we were comfortable with. What boundaries we needed. How we'd support each other if things got difficult again. We decided on dinner with our parents twice a month. Neutral locations only, never their house or ours, 1 hour maximum. We'd pay for our own meals. If anyone violated boundaries, yelling or criticism or manipulation, we'd leave immediately, no second chances in the moment. We'd attend the monthly family therapy sessions, but also do our own individual therapy. We'd talk to each other weekly, checking in, making sure neither of us was backsliding into old patterns of overgiving. "You ready for this?" Carl asked as we finished our coffee. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The family meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at a coffee shop equidistant from everyone. When I arrived, Mom and Dad were already sitting at a corner table. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. I sat down across from them. Carl was on video call from California on my phone, propped against the sugar caddy. "You have something for us," I said. Dad pulled out 2 envelopes, handwritten. He slid them across the table. "These are our apologies. We wrote them separately. Please read them." I opened Dad's first. It was 2 pages, front and back. His handwriting was shaky, but legible. "Dear Dorothy," it began. "I've spent the past week thinking about what kind of father I've been to you. The answer is painful. I've been absent when you needed me present, dismissive when you needed validation, and complicit in your mother's treatment of you when I should have been your protector. You saved our home, our cars, our financial lives, and I responded by calling you a freeloader. There is no excuse for that ignorance and cruelty. I was weak. I let my own shame about failing as a provider make me blind to your generosity. I let your mother's anxieties about appearances dictate how I treated you. I failed you as a father. I'm deeply sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see you now. And I'm committed to doing the work to become someone worthy of being your father. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm more grateful than I can express that you're giving me another chance, Dad." I felt my eyes burning. I passed it to Carl on the screen. He read it silently, nodded. Mom's letter was shorter, 1 page. Her handwriting was tight and controlled. "Dorothy, I know you want an apology, so here it is. I'm sorry that my expectations hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that I didn't realize you were paying for things. I'm sorry that you felt unappreciated. I was raised to believe that parents should have successful children, and that belief made me hard on you. I'm trying to understand why that was wrong. The therapist says I have issues with control and external validation. I'm working on it. I hope we can move forward. Mom, it wasn't perfect. It was barely adequate, but it was more than she'd ever given before. Thank you," I said. "I'm accepting these. And I'm holding you accountable to the changes you've promised." The next 3 months were hard. Family therapy sessions were tense and often painful. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Susan Rodriguez, didn't let anyone hide. She made Mom articulate exactly what she'd done and why it was harmful. She made Dad confront his passivity and how it enabled dysfunction. She made Carl and me express our anger and hurt instead of swallowing it. Mom cried in the 3rd session. Real tears, not manipulative ones. She talked about her own mother, who'd kicked her out at 18 and told her she'd never amount to anything. She talked about spending her entire adult life trying to prove that woman wrong by having successful children. She talked about how every time someone asked about us, she felt her mother's judgment in her bones. "So you put that on them," Dr. Rodriguez said. "You made your children responsible for healing your trauma." "I didn't mean to, but you did, and the impact doesn't change based on intention." It was brutal to watch, but necessary. Dad started taking antidepressants for depression he'd had for years, but never treated. He started getting regular construction work through referrals. Small jobs, additions, deck repairs. He came to therapy willing to be honest about his failures. Mom got a full-time job as an office manager at a dental practice. $42,000 a year. She hated it at first. She'd been part-time by choice, enjoying her free time. But the structure was good for her. She had less time to obsess about appearances. They sold 1 car. Dad kept his truck for work. Mom took the bus or got rides. The $700 a month that freed up made an enormous difference. By month 4, they'd saved $3,000 in an emergency fund. The first time in decades they had savings. I visited twice a month, like we'd agreed. Dinners at restaurants. Conversations that were sometimes stilted, but gradually became easier. Mom still made comments occasionally, little digs about my apartment or my clothes or my choices. But now Dad interrupted her. Patricia, that's not appropriate. And she'd stop, apologize awkwardly, change the subject. Progress, not perfection. Carl visited once during those months. He was honest with them for the first time about his life, that he managed a restaurant, not a tech company, that he'd struggled, that their rejection had nearly broken him. They listened. Dad apologized again. Mom said she was glad he was being honest now. Month 5, I took my parents to lunch. Something felt different about Mom. She was quieter, less performative. I've been thinking about the house, she said. Your father and I talked about it. We don't need 4 bedrooms. We don't need the big yard. We've been trying to afford a lifestyle that was never really ours. We want to sell it. Even if we could afford it, we don't want it anymore. I was shocked. That house was everything to you. It was everything to the person I thought I needed to be, she corrected. But I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of performing. I just want to live simply and stop drowning. Dad nodded. We found a little 3-bedroom ranch house in a quiet neighborhood. It's 1/3 the price. We can afford it easily on our combined incomes. We'll have money left over to save and live on. It feels like starting over. I felt something crack open in my chest. Relief. Hope. Maybe even forgiveness beginning to form. I have something to tell you, I said. I've been saving money for you. $1,000 a month for 5 months. I was planning to give it to you as a down payment on something smaller when you couldn't afford the big house anymore. But it sounds like you don't need rescuing. You're rescuing yourselves. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Dorothy, you've given us so much already. This is a gift, not a rescue. Consider it a housewarming present for your new life. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time she'd touched me with affection in years. Thank you for not giving up on us, for being stronger than we were. The 6th month arrived. My automatic payments stopped as scheduled. But by then, Mom and Dad were covering their bills themselves. They'd listed the big house. They'd been approved for a mortgage on the smaller one. They were managing. The night before the house sold, I went over there one last time. Walked through the rooms I'd grown up in. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook. The living room where we'd watched movies. The backyard where I'd played as a child. The guest house where I'd lived for 3 years. Sacrificing everything to save people who didn't know they needed saving. It was just a house. The memories were complicated, but I could let it go. 3 months later, I stood in my parents' new living room, helping them unpack boxes. The house was small but bright. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,200 square feet. The mortgage payment was $1,200 monthly, easily manageable on their combined income of $77,000 a year. This is perfect, Mom said, looking around at the open floor plan. I can't believe we stayed in that big house for so long. It was like living in a museum. Dad was assembling a bookshelf in the corner. He looked healthier, less gray, more present. The antidepressants and therapy had helped. So had the steady construction work. He'd built a reputation for quality craftsmanship again, getting jobs through word of mouth. Carl flew in for the housewarming. We'd grown close over the past months. Weekly phone calls, video chats. He was planning to move back to Texas in 6 months. He'd saved enough for a security deposit and had interviews lined up at restaurants in Austin. He wanted to be near family. Real family, built on honesty instead of performance. The 4 of us sat in the new living room eating pizza from boxes because the kitchen table wasn't assembled yet. It was casual, easy. Nothing like the tense, formal dinners of before. I got promoted again, I mentioned. They're making me lead architect on the new project. Comes with a raise to $210,000. Dad beamed. That's incredible, sweetheart. You've worked so hard. Mom smiled. Her face looked different when she smiled genuinely. Softer. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of myself for being able to say that without comparing you to anyone else. Growth, Carl said, raising his pizza slice and a mock toast. We laughed. It felt good. Over the next few months, I watched my parents transform in small but significant ways. Dad started calling just to chat, not because he needed something. He'd tell me about jobs he was working on, asking my advice on business decisions. He respected my opinion. Mom joined a support group for adult children of narcissistic parents. She was working on understanding her own trauma instead of perpetuating it. She still had bad days. Days when the old patterns crept back. But she caught herself now. Apologized. Corrected course. I started dating someone I met through Amanda's game night. His name was Jason. He was a high school history teacher with a good heart and no patience for dysfunction. I told him everything on our third date. The whole story. He listened and then said, "You're incredibly strong, and you deserve people who see that." It was the first time I believed it. Carl moved back to Texas in early spring. He got a job managing a upscale restaurant downtown. He rented an apartment 15 minutes from mine. We had dinner weekly, game nights monthly. We built the sibling relationship we'd never had growing up. On a Saturday in April, 6 months after my parents moved into their new house, I went over for lunch. I found Dad in the garage organizing tools. Mom was in the kitchen, making sandwiches. The house smelled like coffee and fresh paint. They were still decorating, making it theirs. "I need to tell you something," Dad said when I walked in. He set down the wrench he was holding and turned to face me. "I've been in therapy for 8 months now. Individual sessions, not just the family ones. And my therapist asked me to think about what I'd want to say to you if I knew I'd never see you again. What I'd need you to know. Dad, you're not dying, are you?" No. He laughed. "Nothing like that. But it's a good exercise. Forces you to get to the important stuff. So here it is. You saved my life, Dorothy, not just financially. Emotionally, spiritually. I was drowning in shame and failure, and I'd given up. I was just existing, waiting to die. When everything fell apart and you walked away, I had to face what I'd become, and it was horrible. But necessary. You gave me the gift of consequences, and then you gave me the gift of another chance. I don't deserve you as a daughter, but I'm grateful every day that I get to be your father." My throat closed up. Tears spilled down my face. "Oh, Dad!" He hugged me. A real hug. Tight and warm and present. "I'm so proud of you. Not because of your job or your money or anything external. I'm proud of who you are. Your strength. Your integrity. Your capacity to love even when it costs you. You're remarkable." Mom appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. She walked over and joined the hug. "I'm proud too, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see you clearly. My whole life, I was looking at you through the lens of my own fear, but I see you now, and you're more than I ever dreamed you could be. Not because of what you achieve, but because of who you are." We stood there in the garage, the three of us, crying and holding each other. It wasn't perfect. We'd never be a perfect family. Too much had happened. Too many wounds had been opened. But we were healing. And that was enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Carl. "How's it going over there?" I stepped back and wiped my eyes, smiling. "Really good, actually." Another text. "Save me some food, I'm coming over. Can't let you have all the family bonding time." I showed my parents. They laughed. "Tell him to bring ice cream," Mom said. "We're celebrating." Celebrating what? Being a family. Finally. That night, the four of us sat around my parents' new kitchen table. It was small, only seats 4. Nothing like the massive dining table from the old house, but it fit perfectly in the space. We ate sandwiches and ice cream and told stories. Good stories and bad stories and everything in between. Carl talked about the night he drove to California with $800 and a broken heart, about sleeping in his car and wondering if he'd ever feel okay again. I talked about the night they kicked me out, sitting in that hotel room, deciding whether to let them fall or catch them one more time. Dad talked about the shame of losing his business, the weight of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Mom talked about her mother, the cruelty, the impossible standards, the way she'd sworn she'd never treat her children that way, and then did exactly that. We were honest, raw, real, and it was the most connected I'd ever felt to them. Before I left that night, Mom walked me to my car. The street was quiet, stars visible in the clear Texas sky. "I've been thinking about your birthday," she said. "Last year, the worst day of your life, probably. And ours, even if we didn't know it yet. I want to make it right. Your 31st birthday is in 2 months. I want to celebrate it properly. Will you let me?" I hesitated. "Mom, you don't have to do anything big or expensive or—" "I'm not. I'm just going to make your favorite meal. Have a cake. Invite Carl. Spend time together. Simple, but meaningful. Please?" I looked at her face in the dim light. She looked older than she had a year ago, but also somehow lighter, like she'd set down something heavy and was learning to stand upright again. "Okay," I said. "Yes, I'd like that." She hugged me goodnight. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." "I will." As I drove back to my apartment, through the empty streets of Austin, I thought about transformation. How it's not one big moment, but 1,000 small choices. My parents choosing therapy, choosing honesty, choosing growth. Me choosing boundaries, choosing to walk away when necessary and walk back when possible. Carl choosing to come home, to rebuild, to be present. We were all becoming different people, better people. Not because anyone was perfect, but because we were trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. My 31st birthday fell on a Saturday in June. I woke up in my apartment, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, and felt genuinely happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness of someone trying to convince themselves everything is fine, just quiet, steady contentment. Carl called at 8 in the morning. "Happy birthday, sis. You survived another year of being related to us." I laughed. "Barely. But yeah, still here. I'm proud of you. Not just for what you did this year, but for who you are. Back at you, little brother. See you at 3? See you then." I spent the morning doing exactly what I wanted. Coffee at my favorite cafe. A long walk around downtown, browsing in a bookstore. No obligations, no performance. Just existing peacefully in my own life. At 2:30, I drove to my parents' house. The small ranch with the cheerful, yellow front door and the neat little yard. Carl's rental car was already in the driveway. I parked and sat for a moment, remembering last year. The big house. The formal dinner. The candles burning down into frosting while my life imploded. What a difference a year makes. I walked up to the door and knocked. Dad answered immediately, grinning. "The birthday girl! Come in, come in." The house smelled incredible. Pot roast. My actual favorite, not just something Mom assumed I'd like. Fresh bread, apple pie. The kitchen table was set with real plates and cloth napkins. There were flowers in a vase. Nothing expensive or showy, just cheerful daisies from the grocery store. Carl was already there, helping Mom with something at the stove. He turned and opened his arms. I walked into a hug. "How does it feel to be 31? Pretty much the same as 30, but with significantly better boundaries." Everyone laughed. We sat down to eat. The conversation flowed easily. Dad told a story about a construction job that went hilariously wrong. Carl talked about a ridiculous customer at the restaurant. Mom asked about my dating life, genuinely interested, not probing for ammunition. And me? I just soaked it in. The normalcy, the warmth, the feeling of being seen and valued for who I actually was. After dinner, Mom brought out a cake. Simple chocolate with vanilla frosting. 31 candles. She lit them carefully and set it in front of me. "Before you blow them out," Dad said, "I want to say something. Last year on this day, I made a terrible mistake. Actually, I'd been making terrible mistakes for years, but that day was when everything came to a head. I called you a freeloader when you were literally keeping our lives afloat. I kicked you out of your home. I was cruel and blind and stupid, and you had every right to walk away forever." His voice caught. He took a breath and continued, "But you didn't. You set boundaries. You demanded accountability. You gave us one more chance to get it right. And because of that, we're sitting here now. We're a family. Not a perfect one, but a real one. So thank you, Dorothy, for your strength, for your grace, for not giving up on us when we'd given up on ourselves." Mom reached over and took my hand. "You taught me something this year. You taught me that love isn't control. It's not manipulation or expectation or performance. It's respect. It's honesty. It's showing up as your real self and accepting others as their real selves. I spent so many years trying to mold you into something that would make me look good. I'm ashamed of that. But I'm grateful you refused to be molded. You stayed yourself. And yourself is wonderful." Carl raised his glass of water. "To Dorothy, the strongest person I know, the sister who saved me twice. Once by showing me I wasn't alone in the dysfunction, and once by showing me what healthy boundaries look like. Happy birthday." They all looked at me expectantly. I was crying. Happy tears this time. "Make a wish," Mom said softly. I closed my eyes, thought about everything that had happened, the pain, the betrayal, the consequence, the growth, the healing. I didn't wish for anything to be different. I wished for the strength to keep choosing myself, keep maintaining boundaries, keep building a life I was proud of. I blew out the candles. They cheered. We ate cake and talked until evening. As the sun set, Carl and I helped clean up. Dad insisted on walking me to my car, even though it was just in the driveway. "Dorothy," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something. The therapist says it's important to acknowledge specific moments of growth. So here it is. 6 months ago, when we sold the house, I found something in the attic. A box of your childhood drawings and school projects. I'd forgotten they were there. I sat in that empty attic and looked through every piece. All those spelling tests with perfect scores. Those science fair projects where you worked so hard. The drawings you made us. And I realized we never celebrated any of it properly. We always just pointed out what could be better. What was wrong. What wasn't enough. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I didn't see you. But I see you now. And I'm in awe." He hugged me tight. "I love you, sweetheart. Drive safe." I sat in my car for a moment, before starting the engine, looking back at the little house glowing warm against the darkening sky. Through the window, I could see Mom and Carl laughing about something. Dad, heading back inside. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not painless, but real. I pulled out my phone and opened my journal app. I'd been documenting this whole year, processing everything through writing. I added an entry. "A year ago today, my parents kicked me out on my birthday. They called me a freeloader. They had no idea I'd been paying for their entire life for 3 years. When they pushed me out, I let go. I froze the credit cards. I stopped the payments. I let them face the consequences of their choices. And it was the hardest, most painful, most necessary thing I've ever done. People ask me if I regret it. If I feel guilty for letting them struggle, the answer is no. Because here's what I learned. You can't save people from themselves. You can't love someone into changing. You can't sacrifice yourself into earning respect. All you can do is set boundaries, maintain your own integrity, and give people the space to either rise to meet you or not. My parents lost their house. They lost their illusions. They lost the comfortable lie that everything was fine. And in losing those things, they found something real. They found accountability. They found honesty. They found the motivation to actually change. I didn't abandon them. I refused to enable them. There's a huge difference. This year taught me that love without boundaries is just self-destruction. That giving until you're empty doesn't make you noble, it makes you a martyr. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people feel the full weight of their own choices. My parents changed because they had to, not because I rescued them. They grew because consequences forced growth. They healed because pain made healing necessary. And me? I learned my worth isn't measured by what I provide others. I learned that I deserve respect not because of my bank account or my utility, but because I exist. I learned that real family isn't about obligation or debt. It's about mutual love, respect, and the courage to hold each other accountable. When I froze those credit cards and let the bills bounce, I wasn't being cruel. I was refusing to participate in a dynamic that hurt everyone involved. I was saying my well-being matters too. I was choosing myself, and that choice saved all of us. The greatest gift I gave my parents wasn't money. It was the chance to face reality and grow from it. The greatest gift I gave myself was learning that I deserved better and having the courage to demand it. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about showing up honestly, treating each other with respect, and doing the hard work of growth. Sometimes that means walking away. Sometimes it means coming back. But it always means refusing to accept less than you deserve. A year ago, I thought I'd lost my family. Today, I realize I found them, the real them. And I found myself, too. I closed the journal and started driving home. My apartment, my space, my life, built on boundaries and self-respect, and the understanding that I am enough. Not because of what I achieve or provide or sacrifice, just because I exist. That's the lesson. That's what I want people to know. You are enough. Your worth isn't determined by how much you give or how much pain you absorb. It's inherent. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve access to your life. Set boundaries. Demand respect. Choose yourself. Let consequences teach the lessons words cannot. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people struggle so they can learn to stand on their own. My parents didn't change because I rescued them. They changed because I stopped rescuing them. And that made all the difference. I pulled into my parking space, grabbed my leftovers, and the slice of birthday cake Mom had insisted I take home, and headed up to my apartment. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. A photo of the four of us from tonight, laughing around the table. The caption read, "Family. Finally doing it right. Love you." I smiled and texted back a heart. Then I walked into my apartment, kicked off my shoes, and sat on my couch in the quiet, content, whole, free. This was what 31 felt like. This was what choosing yourself looked like. This was what healing felt like when you stopped running from pain and started learning from it. And it was beautiful. So let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself giving and giving to people who take you for granted? Have you ever sacrificed your own well-being trying to save someone who won't save themselves? Have you ever felt like you're not enough no matter what you do? If so, I want you to know you're not alone, and you deserve better. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let people face their own consequences. What's your story? Have you had to set hard boundaries with family? How did it turn out? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength, setting boundaries, and choosing yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need permission to stop carrying weight that was never ours to bear. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you walk away from this feeling a little stronger, a little braver, and a little more convinced that you deserve respect and love and peace. Take care of yourselves. Set those boundaries. Choose yourselves. And remember, you are always, always enough. Until next time.